Here we are again for another live Ask Flutter segment. With me this hour are Kenzie and Filip themselves. Thank you both for joining us.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Hi. Excellent. Kenzie, I noticed you were showing a lot of brand new things in DevTools that weren't in stable until very recently. You and the team did a lot of great work on them, but which new bit is your favorite?
That is a tough question. There's features on every page that are so new and improved from the previous version that it's hard to pick one. But if I had to, as a Flutter developer myself, one of the features that I have found the most useful is the layout explorer in the inspector, which we showed in the video. But just such a useful tool for building Flutter UIs and working with Flex widgets, understanding how to fix those render flex overflow errors, and definitely a tool that I use often and enjoy using. It makes my life easy. So.
Yep, absolutely. And Filip, it looks like you got your hands on the new bits as well. Was there anything that you found particularly useful in doing the Sloth app?
Oh yeah. So for the Sloth app, I basically designed it to cover the gamut of the DevTools. So it's there was no one thing that was especially useful, but I generally really like and that's not the most interesting, I guess, visually tab, but the network. I'm not sorry, not the network tab, but the CPU profile tab, and especially the bottom up thing that Kenzie showed has saved me many times, and it's been very useful. So I guess I'm grateful to that particular part of DevTools more than others.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And that kind of gets into our first question a little bit, this is from Ask Flutter on Twitter that we did over the last couple of weeks. We have Wilson from Nigeria asking how they can boost the performance of their Flutter web projects. And Kenzie, I'm interested in your take first, since the DevTools are kind of a Flutter project. What did you look at for boosting that performance?
So one thing we did to boost our performance was to make sure we're using a Canvas kit enabled build. So you can pass a flag to your build, a Dart flag that enables the Canvas kit Skia backend for drawing your scenes in your app. And that really has helped our performance. Though I will say the Canvas kit is it's an alpha, beta, whatever you want to call it, project. So it's not completely bug free, right? But the team's great about iterating on issues we find and solving them, and so it's been really useful for us. We mostly develop on Flutter Desktop, to be honest, because it's just nice, and hot reload is great. So, but yeah, when we go to ship, we ship for web, so we got to make sure that is performant as well.
Makes sense.
I just want to say, so I guess we should say Canvas kit is basically Skia running in the web browser through WebAssembly. So it's cool just in general, right? But yeah, Flutter uses it, and you can pass a flag, and it makes it run faster. I just want to say to the original question, generally you have to expect Flutter to be running slower on the web, and that's just a reality. To be honest, maybe a better way to put it is Flutter runs really, really fast when you're running on desktop or mobile, like natively. And it's very hard to replicate it, I guess, on the web, because there's always this overhead, right? Like even if you only do Skia like through Canvas kit, you're still running in the web browser, and you still have to do all these other stuff. And so it makes it harder to do everything fast. So we should kind of set this expectation, right? Like it is really hard to make anything like this performant, and Flutter is performant, like really, really performant. If you think about it, like if you're scrolling a list in Flutter, it will relay out like 60 frames per second. It will actually like rebuild your tree, right? And that's expensive, but like Dart and Flutter make it look like it's very easy and fast because they can compile to native code and everything like that. But on the web, that's like there's definitely an overhead. So I guess what I'm saying is make your apps probably if you're targeting the web, make your apps a little less complex, and you can definitely do that. Like there's a compile time constant called k is web, which you can just check, and you can be like, oh, I'm on the web. Maybe I don't need this fancy little animation or like a shadow effect or something like this.
And that maybe I don't need Fibonacci numbers in my list.
Yes, and so no, you always need Fibonacci numbers, but like the rest, you can just don't do that. And I'll also say, because it's a compile time constant, it will be compiled away. It will be pre-shaken away. That code will not be even there in JavaScript. So win-win.
Awesome. So I have a compliment from the audience, and then a question for you, Filip, to follow up on that. So Filip is saying that they love to hear you talk, and that you seem to be a very nice guy, and that they love your accent.
I am a very nice guy. Yeah.
I can confirm that as well. Filip is a very nice guy. Kenzie is also very nice as well.
Hey, I love Filip's accent too. I think it's great.
Yes, exactly. So that was the comment from the live stream. But the question is one of our Twitter questions from before. Daniel in Hungary asked, how can we check code coverage of tests? It's kind of tooly, kind of performance-y, because we want to be able to test things. And so Filip, I'm interested, how do you check coverage of tests?
Yes. So that's actually, there's good news and bad news. What do you want to hear first? I guess the good news is that there is coverage, and you can just Flutter test -- coverage, and you can take it will generate the LCOV file, and then you can, for example, send it to coverlaws.io, which is like a CI, like continuous integration service, which, for example, Flutter itself uses. So you can go to coveralls for Flutter and see how like the graph goes up or down. It goes up for Flutter in terms of coverage. We should probably also say that what like test coverage is, right? So some people may not know this. So it's basically what percentage of your files and source code are covered by tests. And like, you don't want to have like a 20% coverage. You want to be in like the, 70, 80, 90%. Nobody's 100%, I don't think. But yeah, so we have all that for like your CI/CD, so continuous integration. We have all that. I actually tried it, I think 2 weeks ago, and I got pretty far, but not all the way there, where you can take the LCOV file and like put it into a plugin in VS Code, and it will actually do the right thing. But the bad news is that this does not happen automatically, not in IntelliJ and not in VS Code. We do have a thing for like just Dart. Like if you just run a Dart program, we can show you the code coverage, but not for tests, which is kind of not good. So, but unless I'm pretty sure the feature request is there. If not, then please file it. I will definitely +1 that request, and everyone should go there and +1 it as well, and then we'll have it.
Cool. Kenzie, anything to add on test coverage, or did Filip cover it all?
I think Filip just hit the nail on the head, as usual. I don't have anything to add there.
Excellent. So when you all were demoing the Layout Explorer, there was one bit where you can either use like an expanded or a flexible to change how the containers and how the items within the containers are being sized within those containers. And so we have a question here from Aravind, who is asking, what is the difference between expanded and flexible? They kind of show up in similar contexts. So Kenzie, I'm wondering if you have some insight for us on what is the difference?
Without looking at the API, I'm pretty positive expanded is just a flexible with a default of 1. So if I am writing a build method and I want one item to take up the rest of the space, I'll typically wrap it in an expanded. If I have multiple items that I want to split, I don't know, like 60, 20, 20 or something, I can wrap them all in a flexible and give them flex values that reflect how I want the, row or column to be split up. I don't know, Philip, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I'll just add to that expanded actually forces the child to go all the way and fill the available space, while flexible just kind of like that doesn't force it. So it's like if the child says, "Oh, I'm fine with 50 pixels," then it's fine. But expanded is like, no, you're going all the way. So that's the difference, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right based on my recollection as well. But you all are the experts. So, but this notion of sizing and things relates to this next question, which is from Grisha, who's asking, are you planning to add widget size inspector to the Flutter inspector? They're saying it would be easier to check exact UI sizes and not render object properties, but maybe on hover or something using the inspector and the tools we provide there to select the widget and whatnot. Can we see the widget size there? Is that something we're working on?
Yeah, I would also absolutely love that feature. So it's not currently available, but definitely something that we want to do. And, when, like Philip said, when it comes to prioritizing what we work on, if you file an issue and get a bunch of thumbs up, that's a good indication for us that, hey, people really want this. And, that can help us prioritize what we work on. But I agree, that would be very useful.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, me 3. It would be very useful. So 3 thumbs up already. File the issue and you'll get 3 immediately. So coming back a little bit to this idea of performance, and maybe Philip, you experienced this when you were throwing all kinds of performance issues into the Sloth app. Jeremy is asking that they say, "Hey, my app is very shadow heavy and spending a lot of time doing rastering. How can I speed things up?" So they've got a lot of shadows, and it's kind of running slow. What advice do you have for Jeremy?
Yeah, that's tough. Shadows are generally hard and performance intensive. So it would require to look like closely at the code and see what you can do. Some apps will just literally like you can that you can just wrap anything with a widget and kind of take a picture of it and just like cache it and then put it back, right? So one way to do this is really just like cache this this shadow if it's not changing, right? Or do some other way to just like make it very easy, or hopefully avoid computing the shadow on every frame, or computing a shadow over a shadow, which is so there's no single way to fix this, but there are ways.
Kenzie, any thoughts on fixing shadows?
Shadows are actually something that I haven't personally worked a ton with, just because we are really concerned with performance for dev tools. We're already doing a lot of like complex animations and zooming and all these 2D lazy rendering things. So we, other than like making useful animations, I don't know that we've really ventured into the world of shadows yet. So yes, I second +1 to what Philip said.
Fair enough. And let's see, looking at our live questions. So Carlos from Chile is asking, and Kenzie, I think as one of the engineers on the dev tools, I think you might be the best to answer this one. Is there an easy way to implement those changes that were made in the Layout Explorer just in your code?
Yeah, so it depends what change you make, right? If you're changing the cross-axis alignment or main axis alignment, then that is just the name of the property on the row or the column, and you can add it there. If you are changing a flex value, like Philip showed, he had to wrap his widget in a flexible or in an expanded if that ends up being your solution. So I guess just kind of understanding how flex affects your widgets and being able to wrap it in that flexible or that expanded. In the future, we'd like to revamp and improve the layout explorer so that maybe you could hit a button that says like, okay, apply changes, and then we change your code for you. And that would be great and easy on you. So that's some improvements that we'd like to do in the future. Again, file an issue and get lots of likes and we'll do it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think +1. I don't know, but yeah. So far, whatever I've gotten from the Layout Explorer was in the end was basically wrapping something with an expanded or flexible, and then all good.
Thumbs up, you're good. So kind of bouncing back and forth between layouty things and performance. And so one common question I see about performance, and I'm interested on both of your takes, I think starting with Kenzie and then we'll get Philip. Ayush in India is asking, how do we reduce the app size in release? So sometimes app sizes can trend a little bit on the larger side than we'd want. How do we take it down?
So that's a good question. Also one that's pretty dependent upon your specific app. So we are actually working on a tool right now. An intern on our team is actually building a code size debugging tool, and we're hoping to add that to DevTools so that you can look at a compiled AOT or a snapshot from the AOT compiler. And analyze the size of all the packages in your application. And maybe you have a package, you pulled in a package that you didn't think was going to take up as much space as it is. And maybe you're only using one small thing from that package. So you could rethink whether you want to pull it all in or if you want to, implement something yourself. So again, really depends on your app, but we're hoping to provide you with tools to dig into that soon.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I guess we should say that, I think Flutter is right now at about like 6.5 max that you will have no matter what, which you should be aware of. Like if you want to make an app that is 500 kilobytes big, then Flutter is not for you. Flutter, brings with it the rendering engine and like text rendering engine, everything. So you should not be expecting that. On the other hand, so I'm kind of assuming that you're like in the range of like, my app is like 100 max, and that is either a really big app, which we've seen in the wild, and that can be a problem, and like code can be a problem. You have too much code, but if it's like your app is not hundreds of thousands of lines of code, then most probably the size is coming from assets. And for that, I would just say that we have support for flavors. So we have support for like saying, hey, this app, like for example, I don't know, like this flavor of the app is for this market. I don't need all the language packs to be bundled with it. Or maybe there's I don't know, like a huge amount of pictures that I can have in one flavor but not in another, and stuff like this. It's if you just search for flavors on Flutter Dev or in generally on the internet, you can find how to set it up.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from both of you is that it really does depend a lot on a variety of things. And so like one strategy might be to offload the images to be loaded later and loaded more dynamically from a backend server if you have that option. And if that option is available, it just really depends on your app and what you're doing in the app and what you need people to see immediately versus having that little bit of a network delay is okay. And that's really up to you as the app developer.
Yeah, it's very easy to kind of drop in your images into the assets folder and kind of like be okay, so they are there, and I'm fine. But like in in generally, often you will actually not use the full resolution of those pictures, and that's also, it's not only a problem in terms of memory and the size of your app, but it's also a problem in performance, because if you're resizing, like if you have like a huge 2 meg image and then you resize it for a thumbnail and show it, show a 7 of them on every scroll, then that's going to be a lot of work that you're doing in Flutter, or Flutter is doing for you, but you're using CPU and battery for basically nothing. So yeah, have a good look at your assets.
Yeah. So stepping out of performance and layout and tooling for a second, I have to ask a question that everyone is asking, which is, what do you recommend for state management in 2020? It's the question of the day for every day. So Kenzie, actually for the dev tools rewritten in Flutter, what was your approach for state management?
So yeah, I can say what we did. I don't know if it's what we're gonna just slap a label on as best practice, but it's worked really well for us. We use a lot of value notifiers and value listenable builders. So we keep our code, or we have kept it pretty well contained to kind of like a view controller model. And so the controller will have all of these notifiers, which we listen to from our UI code. So in that value listenable builder. And this has worked well for us because we don't do a lot of dynamic data stuff with dynamic data. Like there's not really a ton of user input or data changing that we'd need like a closer handle on the state. So we pull a lot of data from a running Dart VM, and then that's just the data. And like your CPU profile is not going to magically change until we pull another one. So it's worked really well for us. I don't know, the pattern you use may be different if you're doing a lot of like user input type stuff. But I can say what's worked well for us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like by the way, so I still recommend Provider for most cases, just because it's very close to the metal. It's very close to the, value notifier and everything like that. It's basically a wrapper around the inherited widget and change notifier. And it kind of works for many cases, even for bigger apps, some of them. But that's the thing is that with Flutter, a lot of what you're doing is state management. Like because building UI in Flutter is so easy, a lot of what you're doing is building features and just like building logic, which is almost all of it is state management, right? And we have such a variety of apps as well, right? Like we have everything from business form heavy applications to like cute clock faces and games and everything between. And so it's very hard to say like, yeah, this is the state management of Flutter, because it will be very different for these three things, right? So some people say, hey, like it would be really cool if you were more direct and say, hey, so what should we use? And I think I can see the frustration, and I can see that it's hard for people to decide and stuff like this. But I don't think it's a good idea to be more direct, because then you're kind of forcing everyone on the same level, and you're kind of you're forgetting that variety in Flutter. And we see that there are apps that are very successful, and they chose all these different techniques. It's not like there's an app that's written in not Provider and it's doing really badly. It's not like that. It's just like people have good reasons to choose the state management approach that they chose, and it works for them. So Provider is what you should do if you're not sure, but if you have any other reason to use something else, you should not be afraid to do that. And always know that this is like the majority of the it is hard, and it will always be hard. And it is the majority of the things that you will be doing with Flutter, because that's basically building your app is state management.
Yeah,
I'll add to that.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Fitz. I was going to say, I'll add too that we do use Package Provider as well to handle a lot of like those top level objects that you want available everywhere in your application for us, like notifications and controllers and stuff like that. So definitely useful package there.
Yep. And I think that the high level answer I took away from both of you is, again, it depends.
Isn't that an answer for everything? Like,
yeah, we could just go all the way down these questions and answer it depends, and then we'll be done, and it'll be a great Ask Flutter session.
It's the true one size fits all answer that we have. Yes,
exactly. So I have a couple of really quick questions left for you both. First one, just PWA versus Flutter. So progressive web app versus Flutter. Filip first. Which one or both?
So ideally both, because Flutter can do a PWA, but I mean, not ideally. What I'm saying. So if you're really like if you're focusing on a PWA, and you really want some, like, especially if it's like very content heavy, and you don't need all the bells and whistles of Flutter, just go with PWA, progressive web app. I think the best use of Flutter for web right now is you have an app and you need to, like, you want to be able to provide a part of it or all of it on the web, right? It's like also another target. But if you're building for the web, there's probably a good other option out there that could be helpful.
Okay. Kenzie, it depends.
It depends.
Yeah,
plus one.
So for this last and final question, I want a one-word answer from both of you. Kenzie first. If you took a Flutter app and replaced each of its widgets one by one until they were all replaced, would it still be the same app?
All the widgets with a single widget?
Each widget one by one. So they've all been replaced.
Oh. Depends on the state, I guess.
It depends. Filip?
Depends.
Yeah.
Just no. Generally just no.
Just no. Okay. All right. Well, thank you both for being with us again. That's all the time we've got for questions in this segment. Thank you again, Kenzie and Filip.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.